It was just a regular night at the South Carolina dispatcher's office. The operator was on duty. The road outside was empty. Then, suddenly, a signal, a frequency long forgotten, a channel that officially no longer exists. A voice on the air. "Ranger! Back again! Over!" The dispatcher wasn't supposed to respond, but she went out. 40 minutes later, silence. The vehicle was found, headlights off, engine cold, the voice recorder left on the seat. The recording? Blank. Fingerprints? Only hers. Tracks? None. As if the person never got out of the car. Now think about this. Who called her on a frequency that's no longer in use? Why did that voice sound familiar, using the same words? Separated by years? And the most disturbing question, how can someone disappear in a place where nature always leaves its mark? Yet this time, not even a trace remained, as if she had never been there. July in South Carolina isn't summer, it's pressure. The air hangs over the swamps like thick glass, clear yet heavy. Everything hums, cicadas, transformers, window fans. Breathing feels slow, especially at night, especially near the Francis Marion National Forest, where pine trees stretch into a monotonous wall, and beneath them lie swamps, narrow trails, abandoned logging sites, and old communication hubs, long removed from any official registry. For generations, locals have told stories of swamp lights, strange wandering glows deep in the wilderness, and of voices that sometimes drift out of the forest at night. On Thursday, July 14, 2005, at exactly 9:37 p.m., the on-duty operator at the Berkeley County Dispatch Center, 42-year-old Jessica Gray, received a brief radio signal on 154.775 MHz. That frequency had been locked and taken out of service back in 1999. By protocol, she should never have received anything on it. But the old service receiver, still running in multi-frequency monitoring mode, picked up static, and then a clear voice. It said, "Ranger, do you copy? At the turn, I think. Back here again. Over." A pause. Static. Then again. "No one's answering. I'm standing. Light. Water by the road. Over." And then silence. Jessica later recalled the voice quality was unusually clean for an old analog forest frequency. No crackle, no distortion. As if the signal hadn't come from deep in the woods, but from somewhere close, maybe even indoors. The recording lasted 23 seconds. The source couldn't be traced. Automatic triangulation had been disabled in 2002 due to system failures. Jessica wrote the message into the duty log by hand, marking it as unlogged input, then immediately tried calling the night response unit over the radio. No reply. Crews were already out on a call in another sector. It was a typical moment for a small southern dispatch center when there aren't enough people, when the night stretches longer than it should, when you hear a voice and the only other sound in the building is the fan and scattered fire department chatter over the radio. According to the internal log, Jessica remained inside for another 10 minutes. Then she did something that went against protocol, though it wasn't technically a violation. She went out herself. In the log, she wrote, "Signal check, section SC-12, south of Shell Bay," and left the building. On her way out, she took the keys to a 1996 Ford Crown Victoria, grabbed a voice recorder, spare batteries, and a paper map, the one marked with old radio checkpoints. Printed in 1995, the map had a section in the bottom corner covered over, the section that once listed the active frequency, the same one from which she had just received the call. Security cameras showed her leaving the parking lot at 9:52 p.m. Fuel records confirmed it. The last car to be topped off that day, with the exact remaining fuel level, was hers. She was alone. She took no panic button, no satellite transmitter. That wasn't according to procedure, but it wasn't forbidden. Not until she disappeared. Jessica wasn't a rookie, 14 years on the job. In her youth, a military radio operator. A colleague later said she was the most precise in the department. She didn't chat on the air, never drank coffee on duty. No disciplinary marks, no signs of fatigue. She wasn't the type to panic or improvise. One of her old partners put it this way: she was like clockwork, never broke the rules. If she drove out there herself, it wasn't on a whim. For her, it was a necessity, like she was following an unwritten order. Investigators never found a clear answer, but in Jessica's kitchen notebook, between a grocery list and her son's dentist appointment, they found a strange note. If the voice comes back, you have to go. The second time, it's not an accident. Her family had no idea she had ever received a similar signal before, but the archives revealed that in 1998, that same frequency had carried a brief call using the exact same words. And in 2002, Jessica herself noted a similar signal in the log, calling it too alive sounding and referencing tape 03A, which later vanished from the archive. That time, the operator did nothing. The signal was dismissed as interference from obsolete equipment. Jessica didn't dismiss it. 42 minutes after she left, she would vanish. No scream, no distress signal, not a single move that a trained radio operator should have made. And all that would remain, a car with its headlights off, and a voice recorder with a blank tape. The call sign Jessica Gray heard on the evening of July 14th did not match any active identifier in South Carolina's radio network. No patrol unit, no forest ranger, no rapid response team had ever been assigned to 154.775 MHz, a channel officially shut down 6 years earlier after an overhaul of the state's frequency grid. On paper, it was marked dead, unreliable, unstable, unused. But that night, it came alive. The old Motorola Spectra receiver, still mounted in the Burlington Dispatch Center, kept that frequency in its scan list, left there years ago from a forgotten cross-linking protocol with federal agencies. Jessica knew it. She was the one who once insisted they never disable the old channels, in case someone with an analog set ever finds themselves in trouble. The signal began with a short, crisp carrier tone, a classic PTT click. Then, a voice, male, steady, but muffled, as if the transmitter was deep in the forest or hidden between hills. Words: Ranger, do you copy? At the turn, I think, back here again. Over. A pause, then a second transmission. No one's answering. I'm standing. Light. Water by the road. Over. Static. And nothing more. Jessica immediately picked up her pen, opened the logbook, and marked the exact time. 21:37:11. She underlined the phrase, at the turn. She circled it. Then she unfolded that same paper map, the one marked with old radio checkpoints, and found section SC-12, south of Brady Creek, east of the bend along Forest Route L9, a place where radio contact often failed, a spot marked on archival maps as a relay junction, once home to a repeater that carried signals between the southern and western channels. It was shut down in 1999, the tower taken apart. But the place remained. Old rangers never described the turn on SC-12 as just a bend in the road. To them, it was where a dry forest trail came to an abrupt end at the swamp and veered south. Right by the roadside, there was a spring the locals called the Weeping Stone, a clear boundary between land and water. Why did the voice say, "Back here again"? She was left alone with that question. That night, every patrol in Berkeley County was on the west side of the forest, assisting in the evacuation of a tourist group stranded on a washed-out road. No one could answer her. She didn't relay the signal on the active channels. She didn't log it in the federal report. Didn't contact Central Dispatch. Didn't call the police. She just wrote it down. And 12 minutes later, drove out herself. Some would later claim she went because she knew who was speaking to her, or at least, she thought she knew. There's reason to believe Jessica had heard that voice before. In 2002, her duty log contained this note: fragment on 154.775. Male voice says, "By the road, no reply." Seems like an old recording, but sound too alive. Saved on tape 03A. That tape was never found, but the initials under the entry, they were Jessica's, which means she had heard the voice before, and she hadn't forgotten. When it came back, she chose to go. No one who knew her believed she'd have gone out there on a whim, not without a compelling reason, not without absolute certainty that she had to be there. The voice recorder she took with her, loaded with a brand new tape. Fuji DR, 90 minutes, straight from the spare stock. Its serial number confirmed it. The tape was clean. No prior noise, no worn sections, the kind you only use when you intend to capture something important. A transmission, evidence, proof. She switched it on and placed it on the front seat. When her car was found, it was still there. The cassette wound almost to the end, but the recording was empty. Leaving the dispatch center at 9:52 p.m., Jessica headed southeast, down Highway 41, then turned onto the back road known as L9. Locals called it the Bald Line. The name dated back to the 1980s, after a swath of trees had been cleared along a power transmission route, leaving the road perfectly straight and exposed. A bare scar cut through the forest. Hardly anyone traveled it, only logging trucks, the occasional ranger, and communications crews checking the towers. Jessica knew the route well. Back in the mid-90s, she'd driven it herself while testing old radio modules. Her service car, a 1996 Ford Crown Victoria, carried standard black SCDNR plates with a magnetic roof beacon on the back. But the beacon was off. No one saw the car on the road. There were no surveillance cameras in the area. Everything known about her route that night came from the map found inside the car, and the analog speedometer frozen where the needles stopped, both on mileage and speed. It showed she'd been driving slowly, no more than 40 miles an hour. The final reading, 63,112 miles on the odometer. Given her starting point and likely destination, it meant she was less than 2 miles from the end point when the car stopped. What happened between her departure and the stop remains unknown. The entire stretch had no gas stations, no cameras, no cell towers. The terrain, swampy, with clay rises, thick brush, and burned-out sections of pine. Several local hunters later claimed that, around SC-12 that night, they heard loud, sharp strikes coming from deep inside the forest and saw brief, blinding flashes of light off the roadside. Not headlights, not a flashlight. The weather was typical for July. 77 degree, high humidity, no rain, light wind, no moon, third phase, dark side, turned to earth. Total darkness. With her, Jessica carried a voice recorder loaded with a Fuji DR cassette, a 1995 forest road map, a Maglite flashlight, an army knife, a gift from her brother, also a member of the Protection Service, a thermos of coffee, and one old folder marked SC-41 signal logs, unconfirmed. That folder had previously been stored in a cabinet on the first floor of the dispatch building. It held printouts of unclassified calls made over the old radio channels. Why she took it, nobody knows. But later, that folder would be found on the back seat of her car, open, as if Jessica had been searching through it on the way. On one of its pages, documenting an odd signal from 1993, investigators found a faded, irregular water stain. It could never be explained. No liquids had been spilled in the car. She sent no distress signal while on the road, didn't use the dispatch radio channel, didn't trigger the emergency system, didn't even turn on the beacon. Does that mean she felt no danger? Or was she trying not to scare off whoever might have been on the other end of the call? The last trace of contact was found on an unofficial scrap of paper inside her car. A pencil note scribbled on the back of the map. Signal repeated at 22:19 hours. Same voice. Word, Back, very clear, said once, then static. The time, 22:19, matches exactly with when Jessica Gray should have been near point SC12 if she had been driving at the speed shown on the speedometer. Jessica heard the second call, already en route. It aligns with the estimated time she would have entered the SC12 area. And it means she didn't dismiss the signal. She was still moving toward it. Maybe she thought she was closing in. That note was her last mark. After that, silence. No further transmissions were recorded. Not by the automated systems, not by the analog receivers. All attempts to reach her on the working channels failed. The Ford Crown Victoria would be found 14 hours later on the shoulder of the SC12 loop. Headlights off, doors locked, key still in the ignition. Everything was there, except her. Jessica's Ford was found at 1:48 a.m. on July 15th. A road maintenance technician spotted the car while inspecting section SC12 for damage to the gravel after recent thunderstorms in the northern area. The vehicle was parked perfectly parallel to the edge of the roadway, as if positioned to a precise template. Not in a ditch, not at an angle, on solid ground, with dry underbrush lining both sides. The wheels were straight, the engine was cold, windows closed, no signs of veering off the shoulder. He called the police, indicating that the vehicle was a government service car. Local sheriffs arrived first. Then came the State Department of Natural Resources officers. After an hour and a half, representatives from the State Criminal Investigation Division and Federal Radio Inspection authorities showed up. The area was cordoned off. The first thing that surprised everyone was the condition of the car. No signs of forced entry, no external damage, locks untouched, fingerprints on the handles, only hers, headlights off, hazard lights not activated, front lights set to 0, radio off, the stereo silent. Despite the high humidity outside, the air inside the car was unusually dry and cool, as if the air conditioner had just been running even though the engine was off. On the front seat sat a Fuji DR cassette tape voice recorder. The tape was wound to the 87th minute, an endpoint, no markings, no erased sections. The tape was worn from being wound, but without any recorded sound. Laboratory analysis later confirmed no signals on the tracks, no voice, no noise, no radio interference, only silence. The recorder was undisturbed, left neatly on the passenger side, not touched or scratched. Batteries inside were nearly depleted, but still enough to have recorded at least some noise, if any had been present. On the back seat lay a folder, opened in 2 parts. Inside were printouts of radio communication logs from 1997 to 1999. Several lines were underlined. All concerned the frequency 154.775 MHz. One entry stood out, dated July 18, 1998. Do you copy? I'll back by the road. Over. A pencil note in the margin read, repeats words. Same text, 7 years later? This entry was clearly made while Jessica was on the road, meaning she realized she had heard this before, yet even so, she had not stopped. She kept driving. Inside the car, no signs of a struggle, no blood, no hair, no biological traces, every surface clean, only her fingerprints, except for one, a single strange print on the inside of the passenger door. Male. As if someone had been sitting there, pressing a hand flat against the glass from the inside. It was sharp, clear, unmuddied, but it matched nothing in any database, not even the local one. That print was never identified. No record, 0 matches. The trunk, completely in order. Tire repair kit, first aid kit, spare wheel, everything in place. The coffee in her thermos was still warm, meaning Jessica had stopped no more than 2 hours before the car was found. Everything points to her driving with purpose, calm, steady, and then simply vanishing. The tracks around the vehicle were ordinary. The damp clay showed no signs of running or dragging footsteps. One print from her boot, by the driver's door. A second, 2 steps away. A third, and that was all. After that, nothing. One tracker later said, This wasn't just an absence of tracks. It was some kind of unnatural sterility, like the ground itself was pushing life away. No spider webs on the bushes, no insects, no rodents nearby. As if she sat there, listened, stepped out, and never touched the earth again. Investigators swept the surrounding area within a mile and a half. Found nothing, no cigarette butts, no trash, no signs of the previous night, not a single trace of human presence, no shelter, no trail, no broken branches. The car looked perfectly intact, but without its owner, the only physical clue was the cassette, and even it remained silent. The cassette found in Jessica's recorder was sent to the South Carolina Forensic Lab the day after the car was discovered. It was a standard Fuji DR90, a 90-minute magnetic tape, new, without any factory defects, the kind you'd use if you were planning to capture something important. The examination began with the basics. Was there any signal at all? Voice, static, radio noise, crackle, anything. Not a single analyzer picked up any fluctuation beyond the recorder's own background current, which meant either nothing was recorded, or it was recorded and then wiped completely, or the recorder's microphone had been disabled or damaged. The last theory was ruled out immediately. The device was in perfect working order. A test with a control tape confirmed it. Microphone functional, signal amplifier intact, input level normal. Physically, the tape could have captured everything that happened inside that car. But it didn't. The engineer noted something strange. There wasn't even the usual magnetic noise you hear on an unused tape, that faint bed of hiss from air particles from the machine itself. Here, there was nothing, a completely flat signal line, as if everything had been muted, artificially. A spectral analysis was done. It showed the same result, a perfect, unbroken straight line, not a single spike, not a single frequency bloom. It wasn't that the signal hadn't survived, it had never existed at all. Unofficially, one lab tech admitted, "This isn't just erased audio. Erasure leaves traces. Here, there's nothing. It's like, at that moment, nothing could have been recorded, as if the space around the microphone itself was devoid of sound." Investigators dug deeper. Using an audio amplifier with electromagnetic shadow capture, a rare method reserved for wiretap forensics, they tried to pull out even the faintest hints of movement in the car. Seat springs creaking, pedals pressed, turn signal clicks. They found only one event, at 46 minutes, 27 seconds, a short, sharp electrical tick, so faint you can only hear it at plus and 60 dB. Before it, nothing. After it, nothing. The exact source, unknown. It could have been a mode switch on a radio, or the activation of an external device. The engineers gave no conclusion. Their report read, tape functional, magnetic properties intact, no recording present, cause of missing signal undetermined. No signs of tampering. In the official service log, it was phrased as, tape in working condition, but contains no useful information. Possible activation error, or technical malfunction. But Jessica's colleagues didn't believe that. One of her partners, Joe Arbor, put it plainly. Jessica always checked the recorder twice before heading out. She wouldn't have left without making sure it worked. If she turned it on, and it still didn't record, then something, or someone, just didn't let it happen. That was the first time inside the department that an informal term was spoken. Call silence. When there's a signal, there's action, there's equipment, but there's no result. And all you can do is stare at the cassette that was running at the exact moment a person vanished and listen to silence. Shortly after Jessica Gray's disappearance, the Federal Communications Commission officially joined the investigation. The reason, the signal received on July 14th had come through a channel that, according to the FCC's own archives, should not have existed in the active configuration. Frequency 154.775 MHz had been removed from the official list of the Park Service's internal channels back in January 1999 after the full transition to the digital grid. Moreover, by technical regulations, transmissions on that channel could only occur with clearance from the U.S. Forest Service, and no such requests had been filed since 2001. Yet the receiver at the dispatch center had picked up a signal, twice. The second time, according to Jessica's pencil note, was at 22:19 hours. That meant someone not only knew the frequency, but was intentionally using it. And that, in turn, meant there was a functioning transmitter, somewhere in the real physical geography of the Francis Marion Forest. A two-man FCC team arrived on July 17th, carrying portable direction finders and spectral traps. Their goal: capture a repeat of the signal if it happened. 3 days of scanning. Nothing. No spikes. No false keys. The frequency remained dead. One of the engineers, Jason Thomas, later said, 3 days of complete radio silence. The spectrum is absolutely clean. It's like the channel is cemented shut, not even background noise. It feels like no one has touched it in years. But someone did use it. Twice. He added, by all our data, transmission on that frequency that night was physically impossible. The source doesn't exist. And yet, the signal was there. That's a paradox our equipment can't solve. Further inspection confirmed there were no facilities nearby where an old active transmitter could have survived. All towers decommissioned, all stations dismantled. The last known control point capable of transmitting on that channel had been located 18 miles to the south, destroyed by Hurricane Hugo back in 1989. That raised an uncomfortable question inside the agency. Where the hell did the signal come from? In theory, homemade transmitters, amateur radio operators, dead repeaters were possible. But the frequency was in a government service band, not civilian use. The call phrasing, "Ranger, do you copy?" matched the official protocol of the late 90s. The signal power, moderate, not civilian, not amateur. None of the licensed radio operators within 30 miles had been on that frequency that night. In the FCC's official report, the wording was dry. Signal source, not identified. Transmitter, not found. Only physical evidence of transmission. Audio recording from July 14, 2005. No repeat of the signal detected. In simpler terms, the frequency came alive. But how? No one knows. From that moment on, the Forest Service adopted an unwritten rule. Do not use 154.775 MHz. Do not scan it. Do not program it into new receivers. The instruction was verbal, never documented. But any operator who worked in the 2000s knew you don't turn that channel on because it was no longer associated with work, but with disappearance. Off the record, away from the official reports, the questions were different. Who else knew the channel was still alive? Where did Jessica get that old folder of radio logs? Why did she go alone, yet take that specific map, the one marked with SC-12? And the biggest question, if the frequency was dead, who or what transmitted that voice? One FCC engineer, speaking unofficially, speculated maybe the signal wasn't physical in the way we understand it, not from a tower transmitter. What if it was an echo? Or a recording played by the place itself? Sounds insane, I know, but we just didn't find any other explanation. No expert, officially or off the record, ever gave a real answer. Jessica Gray's car was found on a straight, visible stretch of SC-12, an old forest road cutting through the southern section of the Francis Marion National Forest. This part of the forest wasn't considered dangerous. No cliffs, no swamps, no traps in the terrain. That summer had been dry, and the roadbed beneath the tires was hard clay, not soft, sinking mud. There were no driving hazards. The shoulder where the Ford was parked was once a designated radio relay point in the days of analog networks. It used to send signals north to the stations through a now dismantled tower. But it was what surrounded that shoulder that made things strange. Within a few dozen yards of the car, the air felt completely still, despite a light breeze moving along the road further out. Several searchers reported sudden pockets of unexplained, localized cold in certain spots around the vehicle. Within 300 meters of the car, there were no tracks at all. Not just no body found, no route out, no path into the woods, no path back to the road, no boot prints, no broken branches, no shifted leaves, no mud on tree bark, nothing even for a tracking dog to follow. The ground surface, clean, as if it had been swept. The search teams worked in widening circles, first 100 meters, then 500, then out to a mile. Result, not a single biological trace of Jessica. No hair, no blood, no fibers from clothing, no snags on the brush, no torn fabric, not even a drop of coffee from the thermos that vanished with her. The scent tracking expert on the team confirmed. Normally, human scent lingers here for hours, even days. But in this case, it's like she was never here. No residual odor, no sweat, no skin oils, nothing. As if the person simply evaporated from the surface of the earth at this exact spot. The only boot print confidently linked to her was by the driver's door. A second, one step away. A third, never found. Topographer Matt Decker said, "That happens when someone stands, takes a step, and then there's nothing solid to step on. But here, the ground is solid. We should have found something." They didn't. A helicopter with a thermal imager made 3 passes. The forest's temperature was uniform. No hot spots, no movement. Humidity was high, but not enough to hide a human body with all her belongings, without a trace in such a short time. Everything vanished with her. Not a single fragment remained, as if she stepped out of the car and dissolved into the air. The place where it happened was a dry corridor between 2 lines of trees. Pine forest on either side, and in between, a narrow gap, almost as if shaped deliberately, like it was meant to guide a path. But she hadn't walked along it. There were no tracks there either. One tracker, standing by the car, later said softly, "We were looking for a road, but maybe there was no road, at least not in the usual sense. Maybe she just stood there, listened, and then went somewhere we can't reach, or don't dare to." His words were struck from the official report as emotional. But from then on, SC-12 became known unofficially as the exit line. It wasn't closed, but no new rangers were ever sent there, not even with seasoned instructors. Not because it was dangerous, but because it left no trace. That became the real source of fear. Not the disappearance itself, but the fact that nothing remained. No fibers, no scent, no direction, no signs from the wilderness that normally, sooner or later, gives something back. One technician remarked that even in summer, when insects here are usually everywhere, they seem to avoid the space within a few yards of the car. The signal was there. The voice was there. The car was there. But there were no signs whatsoever that a person had ever stepped away from that spot. After Jessica Gray's disappearance, officers from the Protection Service and members of the Federal Radio Inspection began, unofficially, looking through old logs. It wasn't part of the protocol, not a requirement of the federal investigation. It was more an act of desperation. They were searching for precedents, and they found them. The first matches surfaced in the archived call journals of the Charleston Dispatch Hub from 1981, 1993, and 1998. In every case, there was a brief voice transmission on 154.775 MHz, all of them outside of official operating hours, all without any confirmed source, all containing phrases structurally similar to what Jessica had heard. Operators in 1993 and 1998 also noted strange background phenomena, a metallic taste in the sound or a low ambient hum they couldn't identify and which vanished instantly the moment the transmission cut out. Here are fragments from those calls. 1981. By the water, I think. Back here again. Over. 1993. Ranger, do you copy? Everything's in place. I'm standing. Back here again. 1998. No one's answering. I'm not sure. Back or forward. In all three cases, the signals were recorded on old analog tape recorders. The original recordings didn't survive. The tapes were destroyed in 2000. Only paper transcriptions remained, handwritten by operators with notes marking the calls as declined due to absence of channel. What was most unsettling was the geography of the calls. All originated from the same quadrant, the southeastern section of the Francis Marion Forest, between SC-12 and the dry bed of Dog Point Creek, the very area where Jessica's car was found. Locals say this area has long been connected to several stories of people who vanished without a trace in the mid-20th century, bodies never recovered despite extensive searches. At the time, no disappearances were linked to these calls. No one connected the transmissions with real events. In 1993, one operator even noted in the log, "Looks like a test or an old beacon, canceled response." But after 2005, those coincidences no longer seemed accidental. A former radio technician, Jim Calhoun, who retired shortly before, shared in a private conversation. "I remember in the 90s the guys joked, if you hear a voice without a call sign on 75-point frequency, don't reply. Because if you do, they might call you to come. And you'll come." He said it without a smile. Calhoun added, "Back then, we thought it was just interference or someone's prank. But now, those phrases, back here again, back or forward, they don't sound like the words of a lost man. They sound like an invitation, or like a test." No official conclusion was ever made linking the 1981-1998 calls with Jessica's disappearance. They are not mentioned in the case files. But copies of these logs were found in Jessica's service folder in her car. Where she got them, unknown. Some of the printouts weren't even in the digital archive, which means either she collected them herself or someone handed them to her personally. One page was especially worn. On it, a 1993 log entry with the phrase, "Back here again." Beneath it, a pencil note written in her hand. "I've heard this, definitely. This is not from the archive. This is on the air, now." She matched the phrases, saw the similarities, and still, she went alone. The last transmission, July 14th, 2005. After that, nothing. Not that day, not a month later, not in the years since. 154.775 mirrors went silent for good, though some operators using old analog receivers claimed that in the SC-12 area during the years after 2005, there were occasional bursts, brief, inexplicable spikes of static or white noise on that exact frequency. They lasted only fractions of a second, and they could not be traced. 13 months after Jessica Gray vanished, the investigation was suspended. The case stayed open, classified as person missing under undetermined circumstances within official duty route. But in reality, it was frozen. No new signals, no fresh evidence, no one reached out. Her car was moved to a secured lot in the Berkeley County Administrative Hangar. It's still there. Doors closed, windows fogged, old radio in the dash, and the recorder on the front seat. The cassette lies beside it, sealed in an evidence bag. Every examination confirms. Functional, but empty. 154.775 mirrors has been removed from all new communication protocols. It no longer appears in the updated grids of the Forest Service, emergency crews, or search units. In most new generation radios from the 2000s, it simply isn't in the factory programming. Officially, a channel that doesn't exist. But some of the veterans still kept paper copies. Some still had the tapes. And some had memories of voices that were never in the system. Sometimes, when the dispatch center fell completely silent, one of the old operators would say they could feel a pressure on those old channels, like someone's waiting there. One of the last documents in Jessica's case was an internal note from an October meeting at the dispatch center. 3 short points, handwritten and pinned to the corkboard next to the phone. If a call comes in without a call sign, do not respond in person. If a signal comes on a frequency not in the active registry, log it, but do not reply. If the voice says, "Back here again," stop scanning immediately. The note was taken down a week later. None of it was official. Jessica's son, Michael, in 2015, tried to request that the case be reopened. He was denied. Reason: no new evidence. He listened to the tape himself 3 times. Michael said, "You keep listening, thinking maybe there's something there, a faint sound, a rustle, anything. But the longer you listen, the more you realize this silence isn't just empty. It's like it's holding a pause, waiting for you to hear something else. But you don't. You only hear the absence." He kept the cassette. Since then, no one has received a signal on that frequency. No one has heard a call sign without an ID. And no one has said, "Back here again, over." But if one day you turn on an old radio and by chance land on a 154.75 MHz and suddenly hear a voice calling you, don't answer. It might just be background noise, or it might be a call that was never meant for anyone living, a call that may still be waiting for an answer. On the exit line, as the locals say about that place. Time behaves strangely there, and sometimes you can hear footsteps that lead nowhere.